All right, everybody. It's Mr. Schauber, and welcome to our Pro Basketball 1970s to mid 1980s presentation. Basketball is going to be changed forever during this time frame, and the talent we're going to see pour into the NBA is going to be amazing. Of course, the NBA has always had great talent, but uh, by the mid 70s to late 70s, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Julius Erving were probably the two best players in the game. And but Kareem was not a real, media friendly, uh, lovable guy. And so Julius Erving was the most popular player in the NBA, and he was kind of the star that was keeping the NBA afloat, really, especially with media and from a fan standpoint in the late 70s. But the NBA was going through some troubling times, and it was nothing like it is today. Games were not televised hardly ever on TV. In fact, even the NBA Finals in those years, late 70s to very early 80s, were on tape delay. They weren't even broadcast live, and there were major drug problems with players in the NBA, and it just fan attendance was way down, and it was a hard time for professional basketball, and really the NBA needed an infusion of some new stars to save the game, and this era is when it happens. So I hope you can see and appreciate how that occurred, uh, 1970s to mid 1980s. Basketball would not be the same without Pete Maravich, the pistol. Unbelievable player, one of the greatest players, flashiest players ahead of his time that the game has ever seen. Played for a decade for the Atlanta Hawks, the New Orleans Jazz, and then the Utah Jazz. Played here in Utah for a short time when they moved the franchise here, and then finished off for the Boston Celtics. What Pistol Pete did for the game was just he made it fun to watch. In fact, when other professional athletes say that they would buy a ticket to watch one of their own peers play, that person's good. Great, right? And that's what people said about Pistol Pete is that other pro players, if they had to, they'd pay to buy a ticket to watch him. That's how amazing he was. Of course, he'd just torn up college at LSU and still college basketball's all-time leading scorer and in just 3 seasons. And there was no three-point line back then when he played in college. And this guy was uh, as fun to watch as probably anybody has ever been, with his flashy passing and dribbling and just the way he played the game. He was just in a league of his own, really. A great sharpshooter, a great scorer all around. He was the third overall pick in the 1970 draft and a point guard slash shooting guard at 6'5" and about 200 pounds. He was just, yeah, he was, like I said, if you watch highlights of Pete Maravich, you will be amazed. Like I wrote up here, perhaps the most creative offensive player and best ball handler in basketball history. Maybe the best. He was a 5-time NBA All-Star in his 10 seasons, 2-time All-NBA first team and 2-time All-NBA second team, so 4 All-NBA teams. Now you're saying, wait a minute, if he was that good, why wouldn't he have more All-Star appearances, more All-NBA selections? Well, part of the problem for Maravich was he couldn't stay healthy, and he was often injured, and his body broke down on him, honestly. He also at times didn't play super hard if he was unmotivated. He didn't always love his situation. Some of his teammates didn't like him. They thought he was a weird guy. He was a different dude, but man, on the court, he could do things that nobody else could really do. And so anyway, that was the issue. But is that his body started breaking down, and at times he was unmotivated. But he was the NBA scoring champ in 1977. You can see he scored 68 points in a game that season versus the Knicks. And you can see his career stats. He still averaged over 24 points a game for his career. And the Jazz and the New Orleans Pelicans have retired his number 7 jersey. And, he retired, as a pretty young guy. He played for 10 seasons. So by his early 30s, he was done. With pro basketball, and he'd go to the YMCA or go to the local rec center and play pickup games. And can you imagine being a teenager, showing up to the rec center for pickup games with basketball, and in walks Pete MARAVICH, right? And hey, can I play? But when he was 40 years old, just a young guy, 40 years old, he was playing a pickup game and falls over, collapses, dead. Um, of heart failure. So crazy how his life ended, but very interesting if you study his life, his family life, growing up and then married life, and really a fascinating guy to study, an interesting guy. So that's the pistol. The most loved player in the 70s was Dr. J. Dr. J changed basketball. He was a living legend. Okay, while he was playing. He played, you can see, for a decade and a half in the ABA and the NBA for the Virginia Squires and the New York Nets, and then the Philadelphia 76ers. Uh, he played at UMass, and he grew up in uh, New York City, and he, he no didn't get a lot of scholarship offers, so he went to UMass and grew and improved his game and became just this legend. Not only was he a legend at UMass and of course in the ABA and NBA, but he would also in the summers go play pickup games at famous Rucker Park in New York City, and they have old footage of him playing in Rucker Park, and I mean when he was in college playing against NBA guys. And then once he played professionally as well in the ABA, he'd go and play, and he just tore up the games. You had thousands of people that would show up. It was crazy. Thousands of people would show up and just pack in around the court to watch Dr. J play at Rucker Park. And not only around the court, but people would be up in the trees, people would be on rooftops of buildings if they knew Dr. J was going to be there. He transcended the game. He was bigger than the game. Okay, he helped the Nets win 2 ABA championships, and he was the playoff MVP both of those seasons in '74 and '76. He was 3-time ABA MVP, and then he once he went to and you can see all the ABA awards he won, um, and then he won an NBA title in 1983 with the 76ers. He was the MVP of the NBA for the season in 1981. Went to went to a handful of NBA finals or deep runs into the NBA playoffs, but he got his championship in '83, and to cap his just glorious career. He was the guy that revolutionized the slam dunk. Okay, um, you can see on the right hand side there toward the bottom, his signature move was taking off from the free throw line and dunking it. So he was the guy that did that before Michael Jordan. He was Air Julius before Air Jordan. Okay, and with that big afro, flying in the breeze, and just he was amazing. He was worth the price of admission, and anybody would admit that. So um, you can see back on the left-hand side, 11-time All-Star in the NBA, 11 consecutive seasons, 5-time first team, 2-time second team All-NBA, and he's the only player voted MVP in both the ABA and NBA. Career stats, over 30,000 points, over 10,000 rebounds. Uh, he was the guy. He was every kid's hero, right, in that era. They wanted to be like Dr. J. The Iceman. What better nickname is there than that, right? George Gervin played in the ABA and NBA. His most famous years were with the San Antonio Spurs, and the Spurs had been an ABA team, then they became an NBA team while he was playing for them. And he was in the NBA, 9-time All-Star, 5-time first team, 2-time second team All-NBA, so 7 All-NBA teams. He led the league in scoring 4 times in 5 years. And you can see there on the bottom left, I love that picture. The Iceman with ice basketballs, right? One for each scoring championship he had. He averaged over 25 points a game for his career, had over 26,500 points uh, for his illustrious career. So the Spurs have retired his number 44 jersey. His famous move, of course, was the finger roll right around the hoop. but man, he could put the ball in the basket. And you have to be able to if you're going to lead the league in scoring 4 times, right? So he was awesome. Moses Malone. Oh, you got to love Moses Malone. Played for 2 decades. He actually first started playing for the Utah Stars of the ABA. That was our pro team before the Jazz. We were an ABA team called the Stars. And then he played for uh, obviously a bunch of other teams you can see. St. Louis in the ABA, and then a bunch of NBA teams. Probably his most productive years, his best years were with the Rockets and the 76ers. Uh, and he was the guy that kind of started this trend. Now, he was, again, way ahead of his time. He went straight from high school to the pros, 18 years old. And so, they started doing that again kind of in the mid 90s. But 2 decades before that, it was Moses Malone that did it. Okay. He was a big guy, 6'10, 260 pounds, broad shoulders, just strong. Okay. Nicknamed the chairman of the boards for his unbelievable ability to rebound. And of course, nicknamed Big Mo for Moses, right? You can see 2-time ABA All Star and ABA All Rookie team, named to the ABA All Time team, and then was on that 1983 team with Dr. J. That led the 76ers to a title. He was the MVP, in fact, of the finals that year in 1983. He was 3-time league MVP. And one of his MVPs came with the Houston Rockets and in 1982. And then the next year he got traded to the 76ers in 83 and was the league MVP. And like I said, also led the Sixers to a title and was the Finals MVP that year. So he's still the only NBA player to win the MVP award in consecutive seasons with 2 different teams. Pretty awesome. 12-time All-Star in his career, 4-time first team, 4-time second team player, so 8 All NBA teams. He was twice NBA All Defensive teams, 1 first, 1 second team. He led the league in rebounding 6 times, and that's where he gets the chairman of the boards moniker. He has his jersey retired by the Rockets and the 76ers. Of course, he's a Hall of Famer, inducted in 2001. You can see his career stats: over 29,500 career points, 20 points a game, 17,834 rebounds, 12.2 rebounds per game. Only player in the NBA to average 20 points per game and 10 rebounds per game on 4 different teams. He was productive everywhere he went, right? He was just great. And the first player in the NBA to win 5 consecutive rebounding titles. So, man, this guy, he was money. He was money. And it was awesome when he finally went to the 76ers. You paired him with Dr. J and a couple other good players, and the 76ers got their title, and Dr. J capped off his career with that championship. So that was pretty awesome. And there is Moses with Dr. J in the upper left. There he is as a younger guy with Houston, upper right, and then on the bottom pictures with the 76ers as well, going up against Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the bottom left there. But yeah, he was tough. He was a bad man. I'll tell you, you didn't want to face him on the court because he was going to out-muscle you and out-hustle you. And Moses Malone's a legend, no doubt. Magic Johnson. Earvin Magic Johnson is, by most people's determination, the greatest point guard to ever live. His story is, if I want to tell you the whole thing, it would take me an hour. But he was the #1 overall pick in the 1979 draft after starring at Michigan State for a couple of seasons. He led Michigan State to the championship in 1979 in the NCAA finals over Larry Bird's Indiana State. And of course, that's when he and Larry Bird started their rivalry, was in college. But at 6'9" and a filled out 220 pounds, he was just bigger than any other point guard in the league. He handled the ball masterfully, a great passer. One of his best abilities was to be able to play at full speed, but be under control at full speed. Most guys can't do that. They get out of control if they go too fast. And Magic seemed to always be in control. He was a master at the fast break, and he was a master at the half court offense and finding open teammates in the right position to score. And so Magic gets picked by the Lakers with the first overall pick in that 79 draft. The irony is that the first overall pick in that 79 draft was the Utah Jazz's pick. And we traded it away and to the Lakers, and the Lakers picked Magic Johnson. So the Jazz could have had Magic. He led the Lakers to 5 NBA championships, all in the 80s. Played in 9 NBA finals overall. He was a winner. I mean, the guy was amazing. 3 finals MVPs, including his first one as a rookie, okay, in 1979-80 season. 3-time league MVP, 87, 89, and 90. 12-time All-Star, 9-time first team point guard, and 1-time second team point guard. So 10 All-NBA teams. 4 times he led the league in assists, twice in steals. You can see his career stats there. He could score if he wanted to score. He could have scored more than 20 points a game. He had 19.5 points a game for his career. He could have scored more than that. But he was very unselfish, always looked for the open teammate. You can see his 11.2 assists per game is the highest all time. And then Magic was on the Dream Team in 1992, of course, that won the gold medal. And he was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2002. His career is cut short because after the 91 season, or in the 91 season, he came out and said that he had the HIV virus. He had tested positive for it, which could lead to AIDS. And we didn't know as much about AIDS back then and stuff. So he was kind of forced into retirement. He comes out to play of retirement to play in the Olympics in the summer of 92. And then he comes back for a short time in 1996, but that was just a short time. So, but Magic Johnson is one of the all-time legends in the history of basketball. And a man whose nickname is Legend, Larry Bird, was just one of the great shooters and great competitors and great passers in NBA history. A 6'9" forward. He was the 6th overall pick in the 1978 draft by the Boston Celtics, but he decided to go back to school for his senior year at Indiana State in 1979. And he led them to the championship game where they faced Magic Johnson's Michigan State team. And Magic won that matchup. But because the Celtics had drafted Larry Bird in 78, they still had his rights, and they had a year to sign him after the 78 draft. And so they signed him after the NCAA finals in 1979, and he became a Boston Celtic. And so, again, 6'9", 220, basically the same dimensions as Magic, but Magic was a point guard and Bird's a forward. But Bird led the Celtics to 3 NBA titles, 81, 84, and 86. He was twice the MVP of those finals, and 3-time league MVP, 3 in a row in the mid-80s. He was just the king of the NBA there for a while. 12-time All-Star, a 9-time first team, 1-time second team, so 10 All-NBA selections. He was 3-time NBA All-Defensive second team, so he was a good defender as well. He was great at anticipating, making the big steal, a good rebounder, and he was just an all-around player. He was the Rookie of the Year. He beat out Magic for that award in 1980. And when the three-point shootout competition became a thing during All-Star Weekend, he said, "Hey, I'm going, I'm playing, I'm participating." And famously, in 1986, he walked in, to the locker room before the three-point shootout, and the other guys are lacing up their sneakers and getting ready, and he says, "All right, who's going to take second today? Because I'm winning this thing." I mean, Bird was confident. Some people would say cocky. But he was self-assured, and he could back it up. He was supposed to be too slow and couldn't jump, and all these things out of college that people were saying. I mean, all he did in college was was an All-American and College Player of the Year and all that stuff. But people still had their doubts, and they criticized him. He's too slow, and he can't do this, he can't do that, and he comes into the pros and he just starts tearing it up. And he proved all the critics wrong. And so he won the three-point shootout 3 years in a row. You can see there. He was the AP Athlete of the Year in 1986. I mean, he was, an all-star. He won the title, was the Finals MVP, MVP of the league that year. I mean, 1986 was Larry Bird's year. Of course, his 33 jersey is retired by the Celtics organization, and he was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 1998. After his playing career, He got into coaching, coached the Indiana Pacers for a few seasons in the late 90s, and then was also an executive in the front office. He's the only player, only person, top right there you can see, in NBA history to win an NBA MVP, which he won 3 of, an NBA Coach of the Year, an NBA Executive of the Year. So he's been successful at every level, and he's also known as one of the great trash talkers in history. And you wouldn't think that coming from Larry Bird if you just to look at him. In fact, you probably wouldn't even think he's a basketball player if you just looked at him walking down the street. But he is one of the lights out greatest shooters of all time. Great trash talker, was always getting inside people's heads, and he was just clutch. Larry would always hit the big shot. It seemed like he was always making buzzer beaters and winning games in the last second. I mean, he was just the guy you wanted on your team. The thing about Larry Bird was, though, he just threw his body around like crazy. He'd dive for loose balls. He'd go into the stands after loose balls. Uh, he, you know, he also hurt his back um, in the mid 80s one summer of 1985, shoveling gravel. He had bought a new house for his mother in the little town, of French Lick, Indiana, where he was from. And he bought this new house, and he was putting in the gravel on her driveway, and he kind of hurt his back, and that kind of that derailed him a little bit because for the rest of his career, his back just kept getting worse and worse. Now, he also had a degenerative back condition, which the injury that he sustained in the summer of 85 just compounded. And so, his last few years, he just wasn't the same Larry Bird, but he was part of the 92 Olympics, the dream team in Barcelona, and he is just, man, he would be on my all-time team. If I had to pick 5 guys to start on my team from NBA history, Larry Legend would be one of them. Um, you can see his career stats there to finish it off: over 24 points a game, 10 rebounds a game, and 6.3 assists per game for a forward. And his ability to pass the ball, he's one of the great passers in NBA history. If you watch footage of the Celtics, especially in the early to mid 80s, I mean, you can't believe the passes this guy made. He had eyes in the back of his head. He was unbelievable. So if you can't tell, Larry Bird is one of my most favorite basketball players ever because the more I watch of him, the more I appreciate his game and just all the little things he would do to help his team win. He was the ultimate team player. And here's some pictures of Larry, right? And just that perfect shooting stroke, the perfect shooting touch. He was just unbelievable. Great competitor. Larry Bird's teammate in Boston for many years and one of the great power forwards in history is Kevin McHale. He was the number 3 overall pick in the 1980 draft out of Minnesota and played for almost a decade and a half for the Celtics. He was awesome. Got into coaching a little bit for the Timberwolves and the Rockets after his retirement from playing, but while he was playing, he was on those 3 title teams the Celtics had in the 80s. He was a 7-time All-Star and a 6-time All-Defensive selection, All-NBA first team forward in 1987. It's amazing that he was not All-NBA selection more often than that, considering he is in the Hall of Fame. But that tells you how much quality there was at forward in the 80s in the NBA. There was a ton. But Kevin McHale had moves that people had never seen before. He named his moves oftentimes around the hoop, and he'd tell the opposition what he was going to do before he did it, and it was crazy. But Kevin McHale was awesome. You can see his career stats, almost 18 points a game, 7 rebounds, over a block and a half a game. He led the NBA in field goal percentage in back-to-back years in 87 and 88. And he's just great player. And he was clutch. And he's a guy you definitely want on your team. Zeke, Isaiah Thomas. Isaiah was basically a miniature version, not miniature at 6'1", but you get the idea. He was a smaller version of Magic Johnson. The two were like best friends to top it off. But Isaiah Thomas was a great ball handler, great passer, a clutch shooter. He could score as many points as he needed to help you win a game. he resurrected the Detroit Pistons franchise. The Pistons had been terrible in the in for much of the 70s and into the early 80s, and the Pistons picked him out of Indiana, where he had won a national title with legendary coach Bobby Knight. And he came out after his sophomore season, and he was the number 2 overall pick in 1981. He didn't want to go to Detroit. He was from the Chicago area. He wanted to go to the Bulls, and he tried to intentionally answer interview questions. Uh, when he was in there for the pre-draft interview questions with the Pistons, he answered the questions all wrong, and the Pistons didn't care. They said, "You know what? We're drafting you. If you're there at number 2, we're drafting you," and they did. And he turned their franchise around. I grew up a Pistons fan, and I just remember what he did for this organization was nothing short of miraculous. Now, they also had they also surrounded him with a lot of really, really good, if not great, players as well as his career went along. But early on, he was what brought the fans back to the Pistons games because, man, he was like a one-man team, really, for the first couple of years he was there. Uh, by the end of the 80s, by 1989 and 1990, the Pistons were champions. They won back-to-back titles those years. And again, this was the Celtics and the Lakers decade, and then the Bulls with Michael Jordan. Jordan was the best player in the game by the late 80s, and the Pistons and the Bulls had some epic, legendary clashes in the Eastern Conference Finals to get to the to get to the NBA Finals in 1989 and 1990. And of course, the Pistons won both of those, and Jordan would have more championships to his name if it wasn't for the Pistons. Thomas was the NBA Finals MVP in 1990 for that second championship, and 12-time All-Star, 3-time first-team point guard, 2-time second-team point guard, so 5 All-NBA selections. He was, you can see, over 19 points a game, over 9 assists per game, almost 2 steals per game for his career. His number 11 jersey is retired. He leads the Pistons franchise in a bunch of categories, and then he became a coach after he got done playing. He coached the Pacers and the Knicks. Wasn't as successful as a coach as he was as a player, but he was the ultimate competitor. He played through pain. He played hurt. He just wanted to win. And this is the golden age of the NBA, as far as I'm concerned, with the Celtics, the Lakers, the Pistons, the Bulls, and so many great players and so many great teams. It was just so fun to watch back then, and Isaiah was one of the great players in the league. One of the most fun players to watch during this era was Dominique Wilkins, the human highlight film, he's nicknamed. One of the best and most powerful dunkers in history. He was in dunk contests. He was in a couple legendary ones. And of course, 1985 was he was champ. In '86, he was champ of that dunk contest. He was also against Michael Jordan one of the probably the best dunk contest ever. And I believe that was 1986. And go back and watch the highlights of Dominique against Michael Jordan. It doesn't get any better than that. He played for almost a decade and a half, mainly for the Atlanta Hawks, played for the Clippers and the Celtics right at the end. Or toward the end, you can see he played for the Spurs for like a season and the Magic for a season right at the end of his career. But he was, for the Atlanta Hawks, he was one of the great players of his era, especially for the 80s. He was the number 3 overall pick in 1982 out of Georgia. Played small forward, but at 6'8" and a strong 224. He could get above the rim and just, you thought the whole backboard was coming down when he dunked it. He was great around the hoop, all kinds of moves, and he was a really good outside shooter. He never met a shot he didn't like. If Dominique got the ball, he was probably going to shoot it. And you can see, 9-time All-Star. He was a first teamer in 1986. He was a 4-time All-NBA second teamer, so 5 All-NBA selections total. Well, excuse me, they started doing a third team as well, so a 2-time third teamer. So he had 7 All-NBA selections in his career. He was the scoring champ in '86. You can see over 26,000 career points, almost 25 points a game, almost 7 rebounds a game, 2.5 assists per game for his career. He's one of only 6 NBA players in history to average at least 25 points a game for 10 straight seasons. He was remarkably consistent, and he is the human highlight film for a reason. Around the hoop and just the moves he had, he was powerful. He could jump. He was all over the place, and he was awesome. Big Game James, one of the clutch players in NBA history. James Worthy was taken first overall in 1982 by the Lakers, and how they had the number one pick in that draft is you'll have to look that up and see the ridiculousness. I mean, they were a championship team, and they get the number one pick through some wheeling and dealing. Okay, but he goes to a team with Kareem Abdul-Jabbar and Magic Johnson, and he just made the Lakers even better. He had been an All-American at North Carolina, had helped North Carolina win a title, and he was a teammate of Michael Jordan there at North Carolina, and he played his whole career for the Lakers. He was one of the great fast break players of all time, known for they called it a Statue of Liberty dunk. He got the ball and he put that ball over his head, took a step and a half and slammed it down. One of the great finishers around the hoop in league history, no doubt. Was part of 3 championship teams with the Lakers, 85, 87, and 88. He was the finals MVP in 88, and he was a 7-time All-Star. He was just awesome to watch. He developed an outside game as his career went along, but he was a great player, no doubt. He was tough. He was feisty. You can see 17.5 points a game, 5 rebounds a game, over a steal a game. And his number 42 jersey is retired by the Lakers. He was inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2003. James Worthy was a smooth, all-around, excellent basketball player. Clyde Drexler, he was super fun to watch. Clyde the Glide, great finisher at the rim, soared way above the rim. He could take off and he was flying. Okay, played his whole career, over a decade and a half, mostly for Portland, but also played for the Houston Rockets for a few years, and in fact helped them win a title in 1995, which was great to see Clyde Drexler win a championship. He was the 14th overall pick in 1983 out of Houston, was a great player at the University of Houston, and he was a 10-time All-Star in his career, first teamer in 1992, twice a second team selection as well, twice third team selection. So he had 5 All-NBA selections to his name. He, you can see, over 20 points a game, 6 rebounds, 5.5 assists for his career. The Trailblazers and the Rockets have both retired his jersey, and he was part of the Dream Team in 1992 in Barcelona. He has an NBA record 8 steals in 1/2 of a game in 1996 with the Rockets, and he's one of only 3 players in history with 20,000 points, 6,000 rebounds, and 6,000 assists. Okay, only Oscar Robertson and John Havlicek have also done that. So I mean, that's crazy. He was an all-around player. Drexler was, and he played on some really good Portland teams. Went to a couple of NBA finals. Unfortunately, for him, they lost him. He played the Pistons beat him and the Bulls beat him when he played for Portland. But then he went to the Rockets, kind of back home, so to speak, in Houston, where he played college, and he won a title with the Rockets in 1995 with some other great players as well. But it was awesome, like I said, to see Clyde the Glide win his ring in 1995. Charles Barkley. You guys know Charles Barkley from his announcing and his studio analysis gig, but um, Charles Barkley is one of the most entertaining players and people probably in NBA history, right? He played for over a decade and a half for the 76ers, the Suns, and the Rockets. I mean, you look at him now, and he's heavy, he's big. You wouldn't think he was a great NBA player. Charles Barkley is one of the best players probably ever. And especially, considering a few things like they list him at 6'6". He's probably more like 6'4" or 6'5". Now, he'd been a star at the University of Auburn in the early 80s, and he was the 5th overall pick because of this. He had nicknames, of course, Chuck, right? Sir Charles, but a nickname he got in college was the round mound of rebound because he was already he could be a little heavy. He could gain a few pounds pretty easily if he wasn't careful. But at 6'4" or 6'5", he played power forward. He was going up against guys who were 6'8", 6'9", 6'10", 6'11". But he was strong. He used his leverage perfectly. And when he was young, he could run like crazy and he could jump. And Charles Barkley was awesome, great competitor, and he was a really good shooter. He was really good around the hoop. He was crafty and had some nifty moves. Uh, you just again, you wouldn't think that looking at him now, but Charles Barkley was awesome. He was the MVP of the league in 1993 with the Phoenix Suns. 11 All-Star appearances, 5 first team, 5 second team, and a third team selection. So 11 All NBA selections. He was the rebounding leader of the league in 1987. You can see his stats for his career: over 22 points, almost 12 rebounds, and almost 4 assists per game. He was a pretty good passer, underrated passer. 76ers and the Suns have retired his jersey number 34, and he was on the Dream Team in 1992 that won the gold, and then he was on the Olympics again in the Olympics in 1996, and they won the gold that year as well. But in the 1992 Dream Team year, even with Michael Jordan and all the other stars that were there in Barcelona, Charles Barkley was the guy that was probably the most popular among the fans, from all the different countries. Barkley would go leave the the athletes pavilion, whatever, and he'd go and out on the town and hang out with the people. And he was just like a laugh a minute. He was the entertaining guy to be around. And so Charles Barkley, yeah, he's just one of a kind, no doubt about it. But what a great player he was too. Unfortunately for him, never won a title. Went to the finals in 1993 with the Suns against the Bulls. The Bulls beat him, but he was really good, and he was a lot of fun to watch. Hakeem Olajuwon, what a great player! What an amazing center. Some of the best footwork, quickest feet, and more moves than you've ever seen. Uh, Played for the Houston Rockets for almost his whole career, and then at the end played for the Toronto Raptors. He was born and raised in Nigeria. University of Houston found him and gave him a scholarship, and he was raw and kind of untrained as far as basketball went when he went to Houston to play collegiately, but they molded his game, and he just blossomed, became a star in college, and was the number one overall pick in the 1984 draft. That was the same draft that Michael Jordan was picked number 3. So Olajuwon, and you can't blame Houston for the Rockets for picking him, the hometown kid, so to speak, that had gone to the University of Houston with the first overall pick, because that's how good he was, and that's how good they thought he would become. And so, 7 feet, 255 pounds, nicknamed the Dream, Hakeem the Dream, and 2 titles there in Houston. When Michael Jordan retired for the first time after his 3rd championship, he was gone for a couple of seasons before he came back in 96 to win another title, well, 3 more, 96, 97, 98. And those 2 years that Jordan was basically gone were the 2 years the Rockets went back to back as NBA champs. He was the finals of both of those, finals MVP of both of those championship seasons. And he was the league MVP in 1994 as well. 12-time All-Star, 6 first team, 6-time first teamer, 3-time second teamer, and 3-time third teamer. And this is an era of great centers, right? David Robinson, and Patrick Ewing, Shaquille O'Neal comes onto the scene, and so, but he had, for his almost, I think 19 seasons, he had 12 All NBA selections. He was twice the Defensive Player of the Year as well, 5-time first team All Defensive NBA, and 4-time second team All Defensive NBA. So 9 All Defensive teams to add to his 12 All NBA teams. He was just great all around. He was a guy you'd want on your team, no doubt about it. If you had to start a team from scratch, and you had to pick a center, you might pick Wilt Chamberlain, you might pick Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, you might pick Shaq, but you might pick Hakeem Olajuwon. And so, well, you can see there, 2-time rebounding leader, 3 times block leader. Of course, his jersey is retired by the Houston Rockets. He was on the 1996 Olympic team that won the gold medal, and he was, inducted to the Hall of Fame in 2008. His career stats, though, are just eye-popping, right? Over almost 27,000 career points, almost 22 points a game. He averaged 11 rebounds a game, over 13,000 for his career total. And he is first all-time still in total blocks and blocks per game in NBA history. 3,830 blocks and 3.1 blocks per game. In 1993-94, that season, he became the only player in NBA history to win the NBA MVP during the season, the Defensive Player of the Year for the season, and the Finals MVP, all in 1 year. So Hakeem the Dream, and he was, man, you go watch highlights of this guy and watch his footwork for a 7-footer. Man, it's unbelievable. And there is Hakeem. Like I told you, he had to face night in and night out some great players during his career. Some great centers. Patrick Ewing, you can see, Shaquille O'Neal. There he is stuffing Michael Jordan there on the far right. It was awesome. Hakeem was awesome.